Welcome back to Good Vibrations. And my guest today is really someone that needs no introduction because if you don't know who he is, you've not been paying attention. So I just say, welcome back to David Icke.
Thank you, Mark.
You were actually the first guest on this podcast when I started it in 2011.
Whoa,
And I don't know if you remember, but it was Zagreb, Croatia.
I
And
do. I
you'd
do.
done one of your all day talks. And I met you in a hotel the following day. And we spoke about the music industry and various conspiracy stuff. And that kicked off this whole series. And there was a woman that had baked you or made you some jam, as I recall, some homemade jam, and she brought you
Right.
a gift. I remember that.
Yeah, well, that's one of the nice things about the last 35 years, coming into 36, is the number of people that say, you helped them on the way, or you were in at the start, or something like that. Because the more people who genuinely get what's going on, and it ain't everyone in what I call the alternative arena, um, but they are so important, and the more of them we have, the better. And if I can have helped anyone on the way, that's fantastic.
Sure. And we also spoke in 2013, came to see you on the Isle of Wight. And on both occasions, we got into conspiracy, truth, current affairs type subjects.
Right.
But I want to have a different type of conversation with you today. We've discussed the nature of this realm and how it's akin to a sort of virtual reality computer game.
Yeah.
But I would like to get down to what kind of force or entity could have created it in the first place. So this is what people would call God. And I've been doing a series of videos for the past year plus, which I've termed my God series. They've upset a few people, but I'm just asking questions. And I think
Oh, you
if
mustn't
we
do that.
exactly,
It's a crime.
I think if we're really honest with ourselves and we look at the evidence all around us, we would have to conclude that this realm has not been created for our benefit, for our soul's evolutional growth, which is
100%.
this popular idea that we've got in recent times. I think that the evidence suggests the opposite, that whatever force or entity created this place is malevolent, not benevolent. So some people would stick labels on it and call it the demiurge in the sort of Gnostic tradition. Some people would say it's Satan or Jehovah. There's all kinds of names you can give to it. But what are your thoughts on the true nature and intent and motives of whatever force created this place in the first place?
Well, what I found interesting in the course and the sequence of my life is how I've reached conclusions from many various different sources and observations. And then I come across things like the Gnostic writings that are talking about the same thing. And what I'm always looking for is areas of agreement, patterns of agreement, where you and obviously you've got different belief systems and different ways of seeing the world, ancient, modern, but never mind the things they don't agree on. What do they agree on? What are the common themes of agreement? And one of them is very, very clearly that there is a non-human force operating in the hidden that's manipulating human society malevolently. And you've said some of the names. I mean, you've got Satan, the devil in Christianity. You've got Shaitan in Islam. You've got the Yalda Baoth stroke demiurge in the Gnostic belief. And on it goes, all around the world, obviously in different cultures under different names. And the idea, I concluded this a long time ago, the idea when you travel the world and you see the shitholes that people live in, the unbelievable life experiences they're having trying to survive another day. It's all right living in bloody Mayfair or Manhattan, but most of the people of the world, most of the 8 billion, are trying to survive another day. And so you conclude, not not without understanding the sense of that it wasn't created by a loving God. And I've looked for, well, since I was a kid, really, when I was at school and you were reading passages from the Old Testament, I thought, well, this don't sound like a bloody loving God to me. It's a bloodthirsty tyrant. And when you look at the Gnostic writings that were found in an earthen jar in Nag Hammadi, about 75, 80 miles north of Luxor in Egypt in 1945, which are estimated to go back to maybe 400, that kind of time, then it's called the Nag Hammadi Library now. Then you see that they believe the same. And if you look at the history of the Gnostic tradition, the Gnostic belief system, wherever it got any kind of center, I mean, the Cathars in southern France were the Gnostic tradition. Wherever it got a grip on people's attention, the Roman Church moved in and destroyed it horrifically, often, like at the destruction of the Cathars in 1244 AD at the castle called Montségur in southern France. And it was thought that the Gnostic beliefs in any kind of detail disappeared pretty much then. But in this earthen jar, they came to light. And what I find interesting is they, first of all, say that this reality is, quote, a bad copy of prime reality. Like a digital holographic copy of prime reality. And that it was created by what they call Yaldabaoth, which I take to be a consciousness, state of consciousness, which is basically a consciousness distortion. You think of balance and harmony and then think of a distortion. Well, this Yaldabaoth is the distortion, the schism, if you like. And all around the world, you find these common themes, like the Native Americans have a concept of what they call Wetiko, which they call a mind virus, which is a distortion. It's a schism. And if it locks into the human mind, it turns the human mind into an expression of it. And when you look at the chaos that we call human society, an upheaval, it mirrors how this consciousness is described in different names, not just the Gnostic name, but others. They translate as the foolish one or the foolish God, because it's not very bright, but it does have an understanding of reality that it keeps from humans, and so it's immediately in a very powerful state of control, purely by what it knows compared with what it allows humans to know. This is why they want to keep the nature of reality from us, and park us in a religion or park us into a scientific, ludicrous idea of some big bang that exploded from a single kind of atom and created everything from the environment to Ethel on the checkout. It's just ridiculous, really. But they don't want us to go down this road that we're chatting about today. And the Gnostic stories say that Yaldabaoth then created expressions of itself, almost like Agent Smith software downloads of itself, which they called Archons, which is Greek for rulers. And the Archons then created downloads, which they call demons. And so you have the same kind of theme again. Christianity talks about Satan and demons. Islam talks about shaitan and jinn. And Gnostics talk about Yaldabaoth, the Demiurge, and Archons. And this this grouping, these expressions of the same schism, were those that created this simulation as a bad copy of prime reality, or part of prime reality anyway. And so you can start to appreciate why this world is as it is. And this global cult, as I call it, this global network of secret societies, they represent the interests of this Yaldabaoth stroke Archons within human society. They play out its agenda of control, of division, of generating the loosh, which is what we're here to bloody do. And from this perspective, the world looks completely different to the one that we think we do. Because if they can, you talk about God. For me, if you want to use that term, it's not one I use, but beyond this simulation, this simulated prison, frequency prison, because just very quickly, we are generating these frequencies from our emotional and mental states. And the totality of that is what we call perception. So we are actually a perception field. And that perception field is vibrating to the frequencies represented by the perceptions. And the idea is that humanity is kept in a perceptual state through fake, false identities and perceptions of the world and reality, that they never reach a point where they're vibrating so quickly that they can get out of the trap of the matrix, which is a frequency construct. And so in terms of God, what you do, and this is controversial, I don't know where you've been going with this, but we'll see if you sync with this, but for a very long time, and indeed, I find later, the Gnostics believe this too, that the Old Testament God, Yahweh, Jehovah, is actually Yaldabaoth. It's actually this consciousness. That explains the demand for horrors and slaughter. And what I say Genesis is describing symbolically, very symbolically, with the 7 days and resting on the Sunday and everything, is this Yaldabaoth consciousness creating the matrix. And so if you can persuade people that Yaldabaoth or Satan, whatever word you want to use, is God, then you are in a position, and I say this is what religions are doing, where you are thinking, believing that you are opposing Satan, the bad one, while you're worshiping Satan under another guise and another face. And the real, what I call the infinite, is beyond the matrix. It's beyond the simulation. But the religions are worshipping a fake God, exactly as the Gnostic said. And I don't believe, agree with everything the Gnostic said, but I'm picking out things of, areas of agreement. And the religion I've described since the 1990s as the greatest form of mind control ever invented. Because what it does, it circles the wagons around your perceptual state. And because the Bible, and I could say this about all the others, the Quran, all of them, because the Bible is said to be the word of God, God can't be wrong. And if God can't be wrong, that means you don't just take the good stuff in the Bible, and there are some really good passages and lines in it, the New Testament particularly, which are very symbolic rather than literal. but you have to not just take the good stuff and leave the rest. You have to somehow encompass it all. You have to encompass all the contradictions and all the situations where you're supposed to be looking at a loving God that's calling for slaughter and mayhem and horror. And once you are looking at trying to square that circle, immediately you become confused. And this is why, Mark, that religion is based on faith. You must have faith. Don't ask for evidence. God doesn't want us to know that. You must have faith. And you know what the Gnostics were saying is that, and I agree with this. I mean, it's what I was where I was at before I ever came across their stuff, is that the way out of here is knowledge. It's not faith, knowledge. It's knowledge of who you really are and knowledge of the situation you're in. And without that knowledge, you focus your attention, even if you are aware that there is a conspiracy, on Donald Trump. And all this stuff that is the real answer, you ignore or even condemn as the devil.
Yep, pretty much in alignment with all of that. Couple of questions here which are related to each other. So you made an interesting reference there to this reality being a bad copy of prime reality that was there before it. So does that mean that prime reality is still out there somewhere and can be experienced? And what might that look like? Is it like this one, except without all the horror and the mayhem? And also, if we accept that this realm was created by a lesser god, demiurge, call it what you will, where was the original god of creation? I know you don't like the word god, but the consciousness, the original creator consciousness, when this bad copy, this hell world, was being created, and why didn't it intervene to stop this house of horrors from being created in the first place?
Yeah, well, it's a question I've asked many times, the second one. Well, what I gather, and again, what I've done is pulled together all these different concepts, ancient and modern, and you make conclusions on them. You make conclusions, for instance, on what people say who say they can remember the incarnation process. They see. I've gone into this in my. I've just finished what I call my reality trilogy: the trap, the dream, and the reveal. And in that, I talked to a lot of people and watched a lot of accounts of near-death experiences and what have you. But also people, and they're much rarer, who say they can remember the incarnation process, which, by the way, sounds very technological, not spiritual. And they say the reason that we don't remember past lives, although in the reveal particularly, I feature a guy called Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist who spent, Canadian-American psychiatrist, who spent most of his career investigating reincarnation and talked to thousands of children who said they could remember, and they could remember fine detail of previous lives. In a number of cases, those people they said they knew were still alive, much older, obviously, but were still alive. And he set out to debunk what they said, because he was a researcher. You don't set out to prove it, you set out to debunk it, and then by debunking it or failing to, you prove it. And he came across the most extraordinary confirmations of what these little kids were saying. in all over the world. I remember one I mentioned in the reveal where there was this little boy who said that he was married to a woman who was still alive somewhere else, another location he'd never been before. So they take him there, and he starts talking to the wife, who's now obviously much older, as if she's still his wife. He's a little kid. And then the family say to him, well, if you are, you say you are, where's the will? We could never find your will. And the kid walked into the kitchen, pulled up his floorboard, and there it was. You know, the stories that Stevenson found of correlations like that were just amazing. So it's something I concluded a long time ago. Reincarnation is real. But as you've said yourself, I couldn't buy for a second that reincarnation is about learning lessons to evolve and karma and all this stuff. I think that's nonsense. I think that's part of the trap.
It's a horrifying prospect for me, reincarnation. Yeah. It's a horrific idea.
Well, it's that, you see, just go off on a slight tangent again, but what I found, Mark, is that the way this reality operates, the human reality, is very much in line with how the astral, as it's called, reality works, which is the afterlife. Oh, it's the afterlife unless you get out the bloody matrix. Then it's a very different afterlife. But because of the focus on authority, if you look at the human experience, from the moment you come into this world, you're faced with authority figures, parents to start with, then a teacher, and on it goes, then the boss. And you basically realize that if you obey authority, then it's a lot less hassle than if you oppose it or refuse to obey it, because you want some proof. Thank you very much. I'm not doing it just because you say it. And so people get into this, locked into this perception of obeying authority, and not only that, but looking to it to tell it what to think. So, you know, we have this thing in this human world called experts. Experts are just repeaters of the official version of everything. So they often find, or you often find, they know nothing. They're just repeaters. But because they're experts and they have letters after their name and they're called a scientist or a doctor or something, people look up to them for guidance, for knowledge, for what to think, how to see things. And when you leave the body and you watch these accounts and read these accounts of near-death experiences, when they leave the body, they are bewildered. That's a key theme. It's like, where am I? And you say, okay, but you believe in reincarnation. Oh, yeah. Then why are you bewildered? You must have experienced this endless times. Well, the reason they're bewildered is because of something I was going into, I'll go into it now, which I call the mind wipe. When I've talked to these people that can remember their incarnation process, they talk about coming in through an electromagnetic field, which basically wipes their mind. It wipes their memories. Now, for some, it doesn't wipe them completely. So you have these kids that are few in numbers compared with 8 billion people, and they fade from about 7 to 10. Their memories seem to fade, according to Stevenson anyway. But basically, most people don't remember because they have this mind wipe. And this mind wipe continues when they leave the body. That's why they're bewildered, because to them, they're experiencing it for the first time. And then they go up this tunnel. And this is the point I was making about authority, is you're in a bewildered state. And then along, out of nowhere, comes your religious hero. Maybe it's Jesus. Maybe it's Mohammed. Maybe it's a loved one. Maybe it's a spirit guide. Maybe it's an elder with a long beard. And all these near-death experiences talk about these things in enormous number. And if you're a Christian, and when you leave the body, Jesus appears, or what appears to be Jesus, that's the point. I explain all that in the books. Then you're going to follow what he says. And it's the same with all these other people. Oh, it's a loved one. You're looking for some solace because you're bewildered. So you do what they say, and you go up the tunnel, and you go into what the Buddhists call the wheel of samsara, and eventually you come back here and have another go in another circumstance. But what these people that remember their incarnation process say is that they cannot express enough or stress enough just how unbelievably dense the energy of the human world is. Because what is matter? It's not solid. Matter is energy condensed to a very low vibration. And because of the density, it's like energetic treacle that we're living in. It generates the circumstances and the perceptual states that produce the loosh. And so they talk about this density. They emphasize that, how dense it is. And others describe how they remember coming in through a electromagnetic field that basically was designed to wipe your memory. And in their case, it didn't work as well as it should have done or was meant to. But they also talk about what they call an electromagnetic field construct, the matrix, which is overlaying another reality, prime reality. And for me, some people maybe in a dream state, maybe some that do get out of here in a near-death experience, they talk about this other, if you like, earth that is in a much higher vibration. Therefore, everything's different in terms of the way life's lived and what have you. But it is, you would recognize it. If you experience this, you'd recognize that. And it seems to me, putting this all together, that this matrix, this simulation, is a digital, basically electromagnetic copy of that prime reality, but in a much less advanced way, and it's in a much denser energetic state, and therefore, in terms of the way life plays out here compared with there, it's very, very different. And as I've said in the books, when the copy, as the Gnostics called it, was made, it was a copy of prime reality. Okay. Basically, you could symbolize that as downloading a website off the internet. Now you've got a copy of the website, but the original website still exists in its form that it was before. And now you've got the copy, you can start changing it, in this case, downgrading it, to fit your agenda of human control and loosh production. And so you could see how, if you like, consciousness could be tricked into coming into this reality originally, and then the door closes, and you are stuck in the wheel of samsara. And there's some who suggest that there was a period where consciousness could come into this fake reality and leave, come and leave, come and leave, which made everything, people confident, talk about people, confident that, come in, go out, come in, go out. And then eventually the door was locked and they couldn't get out. And it was a frequency door. It's interesting that there's a concept, an esoteric concept that goes way back called the ring pass knot. And the ring pass knot is said to be a point where you cannot go through it unless you are in a certain state of awareness. In other words, frequency. And if you are still attached to the physical world, or you're attached to all the illusions of the physical world, then your frequency will not be at a point where you can get through the ring pass knot. And this plays very well with the Buddhist concept of being on the reincarnation wheel of samsara until you reach a state of enlightenment where you can leave the wheel. And that's the ring pass knot, in another way of saying it. But this is the point. What you see again and again in these near-death experience accounts is that when they end up in the astral dimension, which interpenetrates this one, they meet these, they have this life review. This is a constant theme with all these, virtually all these near-death experiences. And of course, there's millions of them now, where you have a life review and these elders look at your life and what have you. And they keep saying, oh, the elders don't judge you. No, they don't judge you. They tell you to judge your bloody self. And they tell you, oh, you couldn't have done, you didn't do this very well. And, oh, how do you think that made so-and-so feel? All this is repeated over and over in these near-death experiences. And so, oh, yeah, well, so what you have to do is you have to go back in and work out your karma and learn lessons. This is the scam. This is why you have this this awe of authority in the human world, and you have this awe of authority in the astral world, the so-called afterlife world. It's the same basic theme, just takes a different expression. And so people come in, consciousness, what you call souls, come in believing that they're learning lessons when they agree, and then they come in, and what happens? They're coming into a place of enormous density, with enormous challenges and situations that they face, and they're not always going to be nice, just the way it is. So then they go, the body ceases to function, they go back up the tunnel, and the elders say, oh, yeah, well, you learned this lesson, but oh, look, there's another lesson you need to learn. And so it goes on and on and on. It's extraordinary. And it's a perceptual trap. That's what the Matrix is in all its levels. It's a perceptual trap. It's getting you to believe something so that you stay in, first of all, you stay on the wheel of samsara, but you stay in the human world or out of it in a vibrational state that means you can't leave the Matrix. And this is why understanding, and this is why these conversations like this, Mark, are so important, is that if you can understand this while you're in the human realm, if you can grasp what the game is, then you can react very differently when you leave the body and not fall for the bullshit. And you can get out of here. I mean, the Buddhists say that the biggest chance you've got of getting out is immediately after you pass. And there are people who've perfected ways, or say they're perfected ways. People have to make their own mind up of how to release yourself from the Matrix when the body expires. But of course, if you think of how so many people die, the suffering they go through, the emotional trauma they go through when they die, how they don't want to leave loved ones, they don't want to leave children, they don't want to leave grandchildren, etc. They're not going to be a high vibrational state when they leave the body, are they? And that's the idea. That's the idea. Death and suffering is part of the game. It's part of the manipulation.
Yeah. Well, that's got to be the biggest question of all. And we're on about an hour now, but if you've got a few more minutes to spare, I'd just like to ask you this. Uh, when we hear about things like enlightenment being the key to getting out of here, our minds can go to things like meditating for 12 hours a day or uh, poring over old texts, tons of old books or something to gain knowledge. Do you think simply embracing knowledge and wisdom of the type we've spoken about on this podcast today is enough to stand us in good stead in a state of consciousness to be able to transcend whatever we might encounter when we pass over into the astral? Do you think taking that knowledge with us and letting go of all attachments to this earthly realm? And I think of things like I used to be a DJ, so I've got a huge record collection, and it used to mean so much to me. But in recent times, I've been really letting it all go. I've been selling a load of them actually, because I don't want that to be something that keeps me attached in any way to this physical world. So I think letting it go is quite a healthy process. But do you think the knowledge alone is enough to stand us in good stead to get our way out of here?
Yeah, not knowledge in two ways. First of all, when I had my head explosion in 1990, the only arena that wanted to know me in any way, shape, or form, because bridges were burned, like a nuclear explosion in my life, was the New Age arena. And so I looked at that, and I'm glad I did. And I experienced it, and I observed it. And what I found was the explanations for enlightenment were incredibly complicated. And you had people making presentations, and they made it sound ever so complicated. And it's like, I must go and see a guru, I must go and do this and all this business. I must drink green tea, and and I've got no problem with that. People must do what they want to do. What I'm saying, and what I've said all along, is it's not complicated. And knowledge is the key. Knowledge, of who you really are. Because what they want us to do, one of two things. Ideally, identify the I with the body and the labels of a human life, the I am R's, as I call them. I am are this, I am are that, I am this job, I'm that job, I'm this race, I'm this religion, whatever. I am ours. So who you are becomes not who you are, but what you're experiencing, and you confuse the two. Then if you can't, they can't get you to buy that, then they want you to believe you're a soul, because the soul is simply the energetic quote body that operates in the astral and the matrix afterlife. So if you're a soul, well, that's fine, because you're still believing what you are is in the matrix. But what we really are is, these are just words. I call it spirit. You are a state of awareness. You are a state of being aware. You don't have a form. You are a state of awareness. And ultimately, you are connected, attached to all awareness. And note that it is blasphemy to indicate that you are an expression of God. You can't say you're God, that's blasphemy. You're just here and God's up there, right? You can't do that. And this is all part of the game. It's all part of the perceptual game. to keep you in ignorance of the true nature of self. We are emanations of the infinite. It's what we are. We are the infinite. We're not in a state of infinite awareness because of this and all the manipulation, but that's what we are ultimately. And if you can self-identify with that, not just conceptually, this is the point, Mark, it's not just conceptually. Yeah, I intellectually get that. You live it, you know it, you completely integrate it. It's what you are. And then there's the knowledge of the situation you're in. So that, genuineness without being streetwise is a manipulator's party trick. Loads of genuine people manipulated to hell because they're not streetwise. So knowledge of who you are, but also knowledge of the situation and how the manipulation works. That when you leave the body, these characters are going to start to appear to get you up into the wheel of samsara, and you're not having it. The idea is not to go into the astral, it's to go through the astral and out. Leave the astral alone, because that's the trap, that's the wheel of samsara trap. And so it is knowledge, but what the Gnostics called gnosis, knowledge, wasn't, what year did Custer have his last stand? Not that kind of knowledge. It's spiritual knowledge. It's knowledge of who you are. It's knowledge and awareness of the reality you're experiencing. That's the kind of knowledge they said you need to get out of here. And I support that. I think it is. And it's, like I say, it's a long way from Trump or Harris. And this is the point I've been making over the last 18 months, 2 years. You are part of the trap. You are stopping people expanding on and on and on into the knowledge that will really set them free. So this is the thing about awakening. You can awaken to the fact that there's a conspiracy, and you can intellectually see it, or aspects of it. You can see the Swabs and the Gateses and the Faucis and all these people. But that ain't going to get you out of here. It's going to keep you in here, because although you can see the conspiracy, your frequency field is not going to change that much. In fact, it can get even more dense because you're so furious at what you're seeing. There's another kind of spiritual awakening. That's the real one, where you start to remember the true nature of who you are and the real expansion of the situation that you're in and how you can get out of it. I know when I meet someone if they've had a spiritual awakening of the second type, or they've had an awakening of the first type. Immediately you can pick it up, not least because of the energy that's coming off them, and also the way they see the world. All these people in this hijacked alternative media, there's some fantastic people on the outside of it. They are entrapping people while talking about freedom. And that's what's going on in America, because this brings us round to current events. If you want to complete the job of entrapping perception so that it doesn't even question anything, including the nature of reality and who it is, then what you really want is to fuse the human body with AI, the human brain with AI. So AI becomes the human mind. So you can, what you think and what you feel emotionally is dictated by artificial intelligence. That's what you want. And you want the whole of society controlled by the artificial intelligence that you control. Now, to do that, you have to trash the previous world, the previous system. By the way, the system that you created and served you well up to this point, but now you're going to the next stage. you're going to the great reset of human society to transform it into a level of control, perceptual control, that in known human history, we've never even come close to. And the idea is that you come into this realm and you never even question anything because artificial intelligence is doing your thinking. And if you want loosh production, then artificial intelligence just generates en masse the mental and emotional states that generate the loosh. And from your awareness, from your consciousness, what the Gnostics call the divine spark within, which gets entrapped and crushed and marginalized by all these different, quote, bodies, like the soul energetic field and the human energetic field of density. So that's what it's about. And what we're seeing in America now, with all these AI tech billionaires circling the wagons around Trump, is this unfolding. And Musk, who I wouldn't trust to tell me the time in a room full of clocks, is driving the demolition with Trump and these other guys, the demolition of the old system, not to set them free, not to set people free, they couldn't care less, but to open the way for unbelievable numbers of government workers being fired so that AI can replace them. That's what's going on. And this AI is, I mean, I've asked this question of people. So what is AI? Okay, there's algorithmic AI, yeah. Then there's the AI that learns from information that's inputted into it. But what is the kind of AI that they want to connect to the human brain and the human form? It's an AI that represents this non-human force in the astral dimension. Your Yelda Baoth, your Archons, whatever name you want to give it. That's what they want to attach to us. So then the whole perceptual state of humans will be the archontic state of perception, exactly what they want. And we're walking into it. And what I'm seeing is people who were pushing back on the AI agenda before Musk arrived are now cheering it on. And it's pathetic. And I won't stop calling it out because this is very dangerous where we're going. There's a guy called Ray Kurzweil at Google, a so-called futurist, strange man. And Ray Kurzweil has said years ago that by 2030, they'll be connecting humans to artificial intelligence. And in his words, artificial intelligence will then do more and more of human thinking until human thinking is basically negligible. He means deleted. And that is what is happening. It's already happening, never mind 2030, but that's when it will reach a considerable state of extreme and beyond it. And Trump is in position, possibly with Musk in tow, or Trump in tow with Musk, until nearly 2030. And this is the period that they want to instigate this AI control system, which is an archontic control system. That's what it is. And if you are in the body and you never think or question reality or the nature of who you are, then when you leave the body, you're going to go straight up the tunnel and the wheel of samsara is going to become locked in like never before.
Yeah. Well, certainly a comprehension of secret societies and social engineering agendas and technological manipulation and these subjects, how these things work, are important. They have their place, but I
Yeah,
think they're stepping stones to the real knowledge, which is the true nature of this reality and what happens when we get out of it, or how we might be able to get out of it. And my mother passed away a few weeks ago, and I got her to watch the videos that I'd done in my series up to that point, in the hope that she would have armed herself with the knowledge and the wisdom that she would have needed to have transcended the soul trap, if that's what we encounter,
yeah,
and to make sure she goes off to where she needs to be, a better place, you know? So it's my hope that others will be able to take that sort of knowledge away with them from this conversation. And it's very reassuring to hear you on this path talking about this stuff, because what could be more important ultimately? So you mentioned you got a new book on the way. I think you must be up to about 30 now. It's about a
yeah,
book a
nearly
year now,
30.
isn't it? So what's the new book, and when might we be able to
Well,
see that?
it will be at the end of the year, but my latest book is The Reveal, which is the third in the reality trilogy, and The Trap, The Dream, and The Reveal, which is kind of the fine detail of what we've been talking about in this chat, Mark. But what I want to do in this next book, funnily enough, it fits in with what we were talking about, is to produce a simple um, chronological story that takes us from how we got into this situation to how we get out of it, because it's something I think that is incredibly necessary, um, because there's people that have this bit, and there's people that have that bit, but very few seem to have the pieces fitted together into any kind of coherent whole. And it's even more important now that people see this bigger picture in a simple way, when their own alternative media is is leading them up the garden path, and holding them in a slightly bigger box than they were in before, because that's what they're doing. And you know, I'm not very popular within this arena. I'm very popular with the genuine people, but I'm very unpopular with the hijackers, and that's okay, because I ain't going to shut up, because this is so important. What we've been talking about today is the conspiracy. Everything else is detail.
Yep, I totally agree. All right, David, thanks for your time today. Appreciate
All right,
your
mate.
your extra time there. Great chat. Thanks for
No,
coming.
mate. No problem, mate. See ya.
All
Bye.
right, cheers.